Today our topic is Central Intelligence Agency of the United States of America. In abbreviation we can say the CIA of the USA. The CIA was created in 1947 with the signing of the National Security Act by President Harry S. Truman. The act also created a Director of Central Intelligence to serve as head of the United States intelligence community, act as the principal advisor to the President for intelligence matters related to the national security, and serve as head of the Central Intelligence Agency. The Intelligence Reform and Terrorism Prevention Act of 2004 amended the National Security Act to provide for a Director of National Intelligence who would assume some of the roles formerly fulfilled by the DCI, with the separate Director of the Central Intelligence Agency. The Director of the Central Intelligence Agency serves as the head of the Central Intelligence Agency and reports to the Director of National Intelligence. The CIA Director's responsibilities are included in collecting intelligence through human resources and by other appropriate means, except they shall have no police, subpoena, or law enforcement powers or internal security functions. Correlating and evaluating intelligence related to the national security and providing appropriate dissemination of such intelligence. Number third, providing overall direction for and coordination of the collection of national intelligence outside the United States through human resources by elements of the intelligence community authorized to undertake such collection and in coordination with other departments, agencies or elements of the United States government which are authorized to undertake such collection, ensuring that the most effective use is made of resources and that appropriate account is taken of the risks to the United States and those involved in such collection. And number 4, performing such other functions and duties related to intelligence affecting the national security as the President or the Director of Intelligence Agency may direct. The function of the CIA is to assist the Director of the CIA in carrying out the responsibilities outlined above. To accomplish a mission, CIA engages in research, development and deployment of high-leverage technology for intelligence purposes. As a separate agency, CIA serves as an independent source of analysis on topics of concern and also works closely with the other organizations in the intelligence community to ensure that the intelligence consumer, whether Washington policymaker or battlefield commander, receives the best intelligence possible. As changing global realities have reordered the national security agenda, CIA has met these challenges by creating a special multidisciplinary centers to address such high-priority issues such as non-proliferation, counter-terrorism, counterintelligence, international organized crime, and narcotics trafficking environment and arms control intelligence. Forging stronger partnership between the several intelligence collection disciplines and all source analysis. Taking an active part in intelligence community analytical efforts and producing all source analysis on the full range of topics that affect national security. And number 3, contributing to the effectiveness of the overall intelligence community by managing sources of common concern in imagery analysis and open source collection and participating in partnership with other intelligence agencies in the areas of research and development and technical collection. By emphasizing adaptability in its approach to intelligence collection, the CIA can tailor its support to key intelligence consumers and help them meet their needs as they face the issues of the post-Cold War world. CIA is an independent component of the intelligence community The headquarters are situated at George Bush Center for Intelligence, Langley, Virginia, USA. And the motto of the CIA is the work of a nation, the Center of Intelligence, unofficial motto. And you shall know the truth shall make you free. Total number of employees are 21,575, and annual budget is almost $15 billion since 2013. And the agency executives are Gina Haspel, who is the today functioning as a director, and Vaughan Bishop, the deputy director, and Courtney Simmons, Alberta General Counsel. And the website is www.cia.gov. Unlike the FBI, which is a domestic security service, the CIA has no law enforcement function and is officially mainly focused on overseas intelligence gathering, with only limited domestic intelligence collection. Though it is not the only agency of the federal government of the United States specializing in movement. The CIA serves as the national manager for coordination of movement activities across the U.S. intelligence community. Moreover, the CIA is the only agency authorized by law to carry out an overseas covert action at the behest of the President. It exerts foreign political influence through its tactical divisions, such as the Special Activities Center. The CIA was also instrumental in establishing intelligence services in several U.S. allied countries, such as Germany's B&D. It has also provided support to many foreign political groups and governments, including planning, coordinating, training on torture, technical support, and was involved in several regime changes and planned assassinations of the foreign leaders. Before the Intelligence Reform and Terrorism Prevention Act of 2004, IRTPA, and the CIA director concurrently served as the head of the intelligence community. Today, the CIA is organized under the Director of National Intelligence, DNI. Despite transferring some of its powers to the DNI, the CIA has grown in size as a result of the September 11 attacks. In 2013, the Washington Post reported that in the fiscal year 2010, the CIA had the largest budget of all IC agencies, exceeding previous estimates. The CIA has increasingly expanded its role, including covert paramilitary operations. One of its largest divisions, the Information Operations Center, has officially shifted focus from counterterrorism to offensive cyber operations. The current purpose and the contemporary purpose of the CIA. The CIA was created, its purpose was to create a clearinghouse for foreign policy intelligence and analysis. Today, its primary purpose is to collect, analyze, evaluate, and disseminate foreign intelligence and to perform covert actions. According to its fiscal 2013 budget, the CIA has 5 priorities. Counterterrorism, the top priority, and the second, that non-proliferation of nuclear and other weapons of mass destruction. And number 3, warning, informing American leaders of important overseas events. And number 5, counterintelligence. And number 6, cyber intelligence. The CIA has an executive office and 5 major directorates. The Directorate of Digital Innovation, number 2, the Directorate of Analysis, and 3rd, the Directorate of Operations, and 4, the Directorate of Sport, and 5th, the Directorate of Science and Technology. The Director of the CIA is appointed by the President with Senate confirmation and reports directly to the Director of National Intelligence, DNI. In practice, the CIA Director interfaces with the Director of National Intelligence Congress and White House, while the Deputy Director is the internal executive of the CIA and Chief Operating Officer, known as Executive Director until 2017, leads the day-to-day work as the third highest position of the CIA. The Deputy Director is formally appointed by the Director without Senate confirmation, but as the President's opinion plays a great role in the decision. The Deputy Director is generally considered a political position, making the Chief Operating Officer the most senior non-political position for CIA career officers. The Executive Office also supports the CIA military by providing it with information it gathers, receiving information from military intelligence organizations, and cooperates with field activities. The Executive Director is in charge of the day-to-day operation of the CIA. Each branch of the military service has its own director. The Associate Director of Military Affairs, a senior military officer, manages the relationship between the CIA and the United States Unified Combatant Commands, who produce and deliver to the CIA regional operational intelligence and consume national intelligence produced by the CIA. The second is the Directorate of Analysis. Through much of its history, known as the Directorate of Intelligence, is tasked with helping the President and other policymakers make informed decisions about our country's national security by looking at all the available information on an issue and organizing it for policymakers. The Directorate has 4 regional analytic groups, 6 groups for transnational issues, and 3 that focus on policy, collection, and staff support. There is an office dedicated to Iraq, regional analytical offices covering the Near East and South Asia, Russia and Europe, and Asia Pacific, Latin American and African offices. And the third is the Directorate of Operations, that is responsible for collecting foreign intelligence, mainly from clandestine government service sources, and for covert action. The name reflects its role as the coordinator of human intelligence activities between other elements of the wider U.S. intelligence community with their government operations. This directorate was created in an attempt to end years of rivalry over influence, philosophy, budget between the United States Department of Defense and the CIA. In spite of this, the Department of Defense recently organized its own global clandestine intelligence service, the Defense Clandestine Service, under the Defense Intelligence Agency. This directorate is known to be organized by geographic regions and issues, but its precise organization is classified. The Directorate of Science and Technology was established to research, create, and manage technical collection, disciplines, and equipment. Many of its innovations were transferred to other intelligence organizations, or as they became more covert or overt, to the military services. For example, the development of the U-2 high-altitude reconnaissance aircraft was done in cooperation with the United States Air Force. The U-2's original mission was clandestine imagery intelligence over denied areas such as the Soviet Union. It was subsequently provided with signal intelligence and measurement and signature intelligence capabilities and is now operated by the Air Force. ADS&T organization analyzed imagery intelligence collected by the U-2 and reconnaissance satellites called the National Photo Interpretation Center, which had analysts from both the CIA and military services. Subsequently, NPIC was transferred to the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. The fourth is the Directorate of Sport, that has organizational and administrative functions to significant units, including the Office of Communications, the Office of Security, the Office of Information and Technology, Directorate of Digital Innovation. It is the 6th. This directorate focuses on accelerating innovation across the agency's mission activities. It is the agency's newest directorate. The Langley, Virginia-based office's mission is to streamline and integrate digital and cyber security capabilities into the CIA's espionage, counterintelligence, all-source analysis, open-source intelligence collection, and covert action operations. It provides operations personnel with tools and techniques to use in cyber operations. It works with information technology, infrastructure, and practices cyber tradecraft. This means retrofitting the CIA for cyber warfare. DDI officers help accelerate the integration of innovative methods and tools to enhance the CIA's cyber and digital capabilities on a global scale and ultimately help safeguard the United States. They also apply technical expertise to exploit clandestine and publicly available information, also known as open source data, using specialized methodologies and digital tools to plan, initiate, and support the technical and human-based operations of the CIA. Before the establishment of the new digital directorate, offensive cyber operations were undertaken by the CIA's Information Operations Center. Little is known about how the office specifically functions or if it deploys offensive cyber capabilities. The directorate had been currently operating since approximately March 2015, but formally began operations on October 1, 2015. According to classified budget documents, the CIA's computer network operations budget for fiscal year 2013 was $6,854 million. The NSA's budget was roughly $1 billion at the time. The Representative Adam Schiff, the California Democrat who served as the ranking member of the House Intelligence Committee, endorsed the reorganization. The director has challenged his workforce, the rest of the intelligence community, and the nation to consider how we conduct the business of intelligence in a world that is profoundly different from 1947 when the CIA was founded. The training criteria is CIA members that has established its first training faculty and facility, the Office of Training and Education, in 1950, following end of the Cold War. The CIA's training budget was slashed, which had a negative effect on employee retention. In response, Director of Central Intelligence George Tenet established CIA University in 2002. CIA University holds between 200 and 300 courses each year, training both new hires and experienced intelligence officers, as well as CIA support staff. The facility works in partnership with the National Intelligence University and includes the Sherman Kent School for Intelligence Analysis, the Directorate of Analysis component of the university. For latest training of students operations officers, there is at least one classified training area at Camp Peary near Williamsburg, Virginia. Students are selected and their progress evaluated in ways derived from the OSS, published as the book Assessment of Men, Selection of Personnel for the Office of Strategic Services. Additional mission training is conducted at Harvey Point, North Carolina, the primary training facility for the Office of the Communications in Warrenton Training Center, located near Warrenton, Virginia. The facility was established in 1951 and has been used by the CIA since at least 1955. Harry S. Truman, the American president, has created the CIA on 26 July 1947 and signed the National Security Act into law. A major impetus for the creation of the agency was growing tensions with the USSR following the end of World War II. The predecessors who come afterward. The success of the British commandos during World War II prompted U.S. President Franklin D. Roosevelt to authorize the creation of intelligence service modeled of the British Secret Intelligence Service MI6 and Special Operations Executive. This led to the creation of the Office of Strategic Services, established by a presidential military order issued by President Roosevelt on June 13, 1942. On September 20, 1945, shortly after the end of the Cold War II, Harry S. Truman signed an executive order dissolving the OSS, and by October 1945, its functions had been divided between the Departments of State and War. The division lasted only a few months. The first public mention of the Central Intelligence appeared on a command restructuring proposal presented by Jim Forrestal and Arthur Redford to the U.S. Senate Military Affairs Committee at the end of the 1945. Despite opposition from the military establishment, the United States Department of the State and the Federal Bureau of Investigation, Truman established the National Intelligence Authority in January 1946. Its operational extension was known as the Central Intelligence Group, which was the direct predecessor of the CIA. What is the National Security Act? Lawrence Houston, head counsel of the SSU, CIG, and later CIA, was principal draftsman of the National Security Act of 1947, which dissolved the NIA and CIG and established both the National Security Council and the Central Intelligence Agency. In 1949, Houston helped to draft the Central Intelligence Agency Act, the public law, which organized the agency to use confidential fiscal and administrative procedures and exempted it from most limitations on the use of federal funds. It also exempted the CIA from having to dissolve its organization, functions, official titles, salaries, or numbers of personnel employed. It created the program PL-110 to handle defectors, other essential aliens who fell outside normal immigration procedures. What is intelligence versus action? At the outset of the Korean War, the CIA still only had a few thousand employees, around 1,000 of whom worked in analysis. Intelligence primarily came from the Office of Reports and Estimates, which drew its reports from a daily take of State Department telegrams, military dispatches, and other public documents. The CIA still lacked its intelligence gathering abilities. On August 21, 1950, shortly after the invasion of Korea, the Truman announces Walter Bedell Smith as the new director of the CIA to correct what was seen as a grave failure of intelligence. The CIA had different demands placed on it by the various bodies overseeing it. Truman wanted a centralized group to organize the information that reached him. The Department of Defense wanted military intelligence and covert action, and the State Department wanted to create global political change favourable to the USA. Thus, the two areas of responsibility for the CIA were covert action and covert intelligence. One of the main targets for intelligence gathering was the Soviet Union, which had also been a priority of the CIA's predecessors. The United States Air Force General Hoyt Vandenberg, the CIA's second director, created the Office of the Special Operations as well as the Office of Reports and Estimates. Initially, the OSO, the Office of the Special Operations, was tasked with spying and subversion overseas with a budget of $1.5 million. The largest of small number of patrons in Congress. Vandenberg's goals were much like the ones set out by his predecessor, finding out everything about the Soviet Union and the Soviet forces in Eastern and Central Europe, their movements, their capabilities, and their intentions. On June 18, 1948, the National Security Council issued Directive 10-2, calling for covert action against the USSR and granting the authority to carry out covert operations against hostile foreign states or groups that could, if needed, be denied by the U.S. government. To this end, the Office of Policy Coordination, OPC, was created inside the new CIA. The OPC was unique. Frank Wisner, the head of the OPC, answered not to the CIA director, but to the Secretaries of Defense, State and the NSC, and the OPC's actions were a secret even from the head of the CIA. Most CIA stations had two station chiefs, one working for the OSO and one working for the OPC. However, the CIA was successful in influencing the 1948 Italian election in favor of the Christian Democrats. The 200 million exchange stabilization fund earmarked for the reconstruction of the Europe was used to pay wealthy Americans of Italian heritage. Cash was then distributed to Catholic Action, the Vatican's political arm, and directly to Italian politicians. This tactic of using its large fund to purchase elections was frequently repeated in the subsequent years. During the Korean War, the CIA director was Allen Dulles. The track record of the CIA was very poor, with the agency unable to provide sufficient intelligence about the Soviet takeovers of Romania and Czechoslovakia and the Soviet blockade of Berlin and the Soviet atomic bomb project. In particular, the agency failed to further the Chinese entry into Korean War with 3 lakh troops. The famous double agent Kim Philby was the British liaison to American Central Intelligence, through whom the CIA coordinated hundreds of airdrops inside the Iron Curtain, all compromised by Philby. Arlington Hall, the nerve center of CIA corrupt analysis, was compromised by Bill Westband, a Russian translator and Soviet spy. The Korean War and the CIA. At the beginning of the Korean, CIA officer Hans Tofte claimed to have turned 1,000 North Korean expatriates into a guerrilla force tasked with infiltration, guerrilla warfare, and pilot rescue. In 1950, the CIA sent 1,500 more expatriate agents north. Seoul Station Chief Albert Hannay would openly celebrate the capabilities of those agents and the information they sent. In September 1952, Hannay was replaced by John Lamont Hart, a Europe veteran with a vivid memory for bitter experiences of misinformation. Hart was suspicious of the parade of successes reported by Tofte and Hannay and launched an intelligence which determined that the entirety of the information supplied by the Korean sources was false or misleading. After the war, internal reviews by the CIA would corroborate Hart's finding. The CIA's Seoul station had 200 officers, but not a single speaker of Korean. Hart reported to Washington that Seoul station was hopeless and could not be salvaged. Loftus Becker, Deputy Director of Intelligence, was sent personally to tell Hart that the CIA had to keep the station open to save face. Becker returned to Washington, pronounced the situation to be hopeless, and that after touring the CIA's Far East operations, the CIA's ability to gather intelligence in the Far East was almost negligible. He then resigned. Air Force Colonel James Callis stated that CIA Director Allen Dulles continued to praise the CIA's Korean force, despite knowing that they were under enemy control. When China entered the war in 1950, the CIA attempted a number of subversive operations in the country, all of which failed due to the presence of double agents. Millions of dollars were spent in these efforts. These included a team of young CIA officers and airdropped into China, who were ambushed, and CIA funds being used to set up a global heroin empire in Burma's Golden Triangle, following a betrayal by another double agent. The 1953 Iranian Qadi attack. In 1951, Mohammad Mossadegh, a member of the National Front, was elected Iranian Prime Minister. As Prime Minister, he nationalized the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company, which his predecessor had supported. The nationalization of the British-founded Iranian oil industry, including the largest oil refinery in the world, was disastrous for Mossadegh. A British naval embargo closed the British oil facilities, which Iran had no skilled workers to operate. In 1952, Mossadegh resisted the royal refusal to approve his Minister of War and resigned in protest. The National Front took to the streets in protest. Fearing the loss of the control, the military pulled its troops back 5 days later, and Shah Muhammad Raza Pahlavi gave in to Mossadegh's demands. Mossadegh quickly replaced military leaders loyal to the Shah with those loyal to him, giving him personal control over the military. Given 6 months of emergency powers, Mossadegh unilaterally passed legislation. When that 6 months expired, his powers were extended for another year. In 1953, Mossadegh dismissed parliament and assumed dictatorial powers. The power grab triggered the Shah to exercise his constitutional rights to dismiss Mossadegh. Mossadegh launched a military coup as the Shah fled the country. Under CIA Director Alan Dulles, Operation Ajax was put into motion. Its goal was to overthrow Mossadegh with military support from General Fazlullah Zahedi and install a pro-Western regime headed by the Shah of Iran. Kermit Roosevelt Jr. oversaw the operation in Iran on August 16. This new inner military circle protected a CIA-paid mob led by Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini would spark what a U.S. embassy officer called an almost spontaneous revolution. But Mossadegh and the CIA had been unable to gain influence within the Iranian military. Their chosen man, former General Fazlullah Zahedi, had no trust to call on. After the failure of the first coup, Roosevelt paid demonstrators to pose as communists and deface public symbols associated with the Shah. This August 19 incident helped foster public support of the Shah and led gangs of citizens on a spree of violence intent on destroying Mossadegh. An attack on his house would force Mossadegh to flee. He surrendered the next day, and his coup came to an end. The 1954 Guatemala coup dated. The return of the Shah to power and the impression cultivated by Alan Dulles that an effective CIA had been able to guide that nation to friendly and stable relations with the West triggered planning for operations. Happy success, a plan to overthrow Guatemalan President Jacobo Arbenz. The plan was exposed in major newspapers before it happened after a CIA agent left plans for the coup in his Guatemala City hotel room. The Guatemalan Revolution of 1944-54 overthrew the US-backed dictator George Ubico and brought a democratically elected government to power. The government began an ambitious agrarian reform program attempting to grant land to millions of landless peasants. This program threatened the land holdings of the United Fruit Company, who lobbied for a coup by portraying these reforms as communists. On June 18, 1954, Carlos Castillo Armas led 480 CIA-trained men across the border from Honduras into Guatemala. The weapons had also come from the CIA. The CIA also mounted a psychological campaign to convince the Guatemalan people and government that Armas' victory was a fait accompli, the largest part of which was a radio broadcast entitled The Voice of Liberation, which announced to liberate the country on June 25. The CIA plane bombarded Guatemala City, destroying the government's main oil reserves. Arbenz ordered the army to distribute weapons to local peasants and workers. The army refused, forcing Jacobo Arbenz's resignation on June 27, 1954. Arbenz handed over power to Colonel Carlos Enrique Diaz. The CIA then orchestrated a series of power transfer that ended with the confirmation of Castillo Armas as president in July 1954. Armas was the first in a series of military dictators that would rule the country, triggering the brutal Guatemalan Civil War, in which some 2 lakh people were killed, mostly by the USA-backed military. In Syria, Egypt, Indonesia, and Middle Eastern countries. There are a lot of such places and areas where the CIA has strategized its intelligence, and the regime changes such type of many policies, and that it functions subversively in the world, and that is doing and showing the world that the constructive business is continued by the CIA, and it only to stabilize the international peace and security in the world.